I'm just some hack at home, but putting that aside.
Well, we're all
Uh,
kind of hacks at home now. I have my
that's
home
true.
studios ripped apart. I'm thinking of making a move, so I want to purge stuff now. I don't want to take every piece of crap to the new location, you know?
Well, I mean, in these times with the pandemic, a lot of people are purging stuff and
Mm.
redoing their offices and whatnot. All right, we're joined by Joe Mangiacotti. He is a veteran radio talk show host in Boston, WCRN in Worcester. Thanks for joining me, Joe.
Thank you for having me, Charles. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about talk radio, particularly in Boston. You've
Yeah.
got roots here.
Yep.
And you remember the late great Jerry Williams, and
Absolutely.
I thought that he was the best. I mean, he was a pioneer in the business. He actually was the first radio talk show host to put live callers on the air. I think
He's
he's it.
he's one of the guys I think responsible for actually saving the AM band because in the late 70s in going into the early 80s, AM was all the rage in the 50s, 60s, 70s, right? And
Yeah,
they when you bought an AM station in the 60s, they threw the FM signal in with you. You know, they just threw it in. Then the music formats went to the FM, and the AM was going to go away. Then it turned around. They would throw the AM in, they bought FM signal.
mm,
But it was guys like Jerry Williams that turned that around and really created or recreated talk radio. And then you look at the Boston market, 10th largest market in the country, and two out of the top three in the major demographics tend to be AM stations
right.
because it's such a great format. And you had Jerry Williams and Rush, you had Gene Burns and David Brednoy and
Yes.
Larry
What
Glick
a lineup.
overnight. And it was these guys that created the demand and the love for talk radio that exists today.
Oh yeah. No, I absolutely. I remember that lineup was one of the strongest lineups. I mean, David Finnegan was in there.
Yeah,
Peter Mead, I think, took over from Bradnoy. But between Jerry Williams and Bradnoy, you had an incredible lineup because Bradnoy brought a certain intellectual power to it. But Jerry
yeah.
Williams was a unique character. I mean, he could sit there for 4 hours alone and just swing open the phone lines, and it was absolutely mesmerizing. I mean, he was just
Yeah, and it
I'm
would
not
sounded
boring.
it sounded like it, right? It sounded he could, you could say, Jerry, something messed up. Go in, turn on the mic, will you, and cover this shift. And that show would sound like it was the best prepared show in all the radio. He could just
It was.
literally sit down and take it off. And I strive to get to that. I would love to be able to get to that point. You know,
Well, I mean, I
we
think
have
he
people today
everyone
that
who remembers him. I mean, what was it? Jim Browdy was a follower. A lot of people that are around today were
yeah,
started out with Jerry Williams.
sure. And he created the, a lot of things, but one of the most memorable things, and it gave Howie Carr a launch into the business,
Right. Hmm.
was when he got the kind of the, uh, oh, who do you think you are? The governor? You think you can do talk radio, can do this? So they started the governors every
Oh
Wednesday.
my God, that was the
And it was
greatest.
Marjorie Clapperud
Yeah.
and Howie Carr and Jerry Williams would meet on Wednesday
Barbara
afternoons,
Anderson.
and he'd gavel. Oh, I'm sorry, it's Barbara Anderson. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Barbara, who was an awesome lady,
she was.
and I have a story about her. But it was Barbara Anderson, Howie Carr, Jerry Williams had gavel it in and say this meeting of the governors is now here to take place,
Oh my
and
God, that
they aired that on Beacon Hill.
if I wasn't around that day, I'd have my wife tape it for me because I would never miss that. It
Sure.
was incredible, and the way they went after Dukakis. I mean, oh my God, that was some of the best radios.
Yeah,
Jerry
but
Williams had
you knew what was going on, Charles.
oh
You
yeah.
knew what was going on in this state.
Well, Jerry Williams
They didn't
had
let
a
anything go by.
no, and he finally Dukakis after he had lost, he finally agreed to come on with Jerry. I don't know if you heard that. Did you hear that segment?
Yeah.
They
I do remember him going on. I can't remember it though.
well, the thing I remember
The
about it,
details of it.
I wish I had tapes, but there was no commercials, no calls, just the two of them duking it out like two guys in a boxing ring, and it was one of the most brilliant segments. I wonder if that exists anywhere. Somebody has a tape of that, but
Oh,
I
somebody
I
has
was
it. That's
I
pure
was honored
radio
to
gold.
it was, and I was honored to bring Jerry Williams back on the air in the final months of his life when I was at the the Christian station in Quincy, where I used to come on after Ray Flynn, and
Mm,
then afterwards um, Don Feder, who was a real sob, by the way. I don't mind saying that. The I the producer there, Jimmy Carter, who was a pretty well known guy, he actually knew Jerry, and the Globe did an article about Jerry. Um, this is 10 years after he'd been off the air, and he was basically driven off, I think, because of his reporting on the Big Dig, and it just kind of gave it a nostalgic look. And Jimmy mentioned to me that he knew Jerry, so I got his phone number and I called him, and I just said, Jerry, I love you, I miss you. Will you come on with me just for a segment that we can talk? And he did. And then afterwards, the general
yeah,
manager gave him a job, gave him a spot, and he came to the station in Quincy. It was right on Marina Bay, and we all met at a
yeah.
restaurant next door. He was in very poor health. He had a personal aide help him get on a wheelchair, but it was the same man. He was funny as hell. He told some great stories, and he went back on the air from his home, and it went for about 5 weeks, and then he passed away. And
Oh, that's too
you
bad.
know, just a one of the great. I remember he said to he. I was talking to him, and I said, Jerry, it was your influence on me listening to you during those
Yeah.
years when I was doing deliveries and driving a lot that turned me into a conservative. And I remember he was very annoyed because he always
Really?
considered himself to be a liberal, even though
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think
it,
the liberals and true conservatives, Lincoln Republican type conservatives and libertarians are very closely aligned and
Mhm.
can often find support in each other and allies in each other.
Right, and I mean just the way he kind of cut through the crap. I mean, you used to rely on the all the smart types from the Boston Globe tell us what was what, and I found more increasingly that turning on the radio and listening to people off the street commenting on news, especially if there was something big going on, I got a lot more truth and I
Right.
got a lot more reality actually than I would have otherwise listening to all of those who, you know, stand up on the top of the mountain and
Yeah.
deliver what was supposed to think. So it was such
Those
a
that talk
compelling,
to us.
yes, instead of with
Yeah.
us, and yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. That's a good point.
Now,
So,
I remember one time. Remember Gene Burns, and Gene
oh
Burns
yeah,
must have had
brilliant guy.
the most fantastic vocabulary of
He
anyone I
did.
ever knew.
He did. That was great.
And I remember one time when uh, the excuse me, the Senate President Bulger
Billy Bulger.
sent right sent a couple of Capitol,
Mm.
police down to the station with a cease and desist to tell him to stop talking on the air.
Oh my.
And I got to tell you what, he just handled it so greatly, right? He talked about the fact that the um, woman who took the notice and so forth, she asked the right questions, and he was basically trying to use his position in the Capitol Police. They used to call him the Palace Guard. Remember that?
Mm. Yeah. Oh
And that was
yeah.
before Weld Salucci
Got rid of it.
got rid
Yeah.
of them and combined all the police agencies and did everything they did in 1990. Before that, the Capitol Police was just a bunch of absolute political hacks, somebody's brother-in-law, that kind of thing. And they used to refer to them as the Palace Guard. So the Palace Guard came down to give Jerry Williams, excuse me, Gene Burns, a cease and desist and stop talking about their ineptitude on the Hill type of thing. And he just tore him apart. And of course, he continued on. That wasn't
Oh,
going to
I
stop him
remember
because it had
Tiberius.
absolutely no
Of
legal
course,
bearing. Yeah,
it was
yeah, it was
Tiberius
great.
Bulger. I remember he used to say.
Tiberius.
And I mean,
That's funny.
Massachusetts back then was pretty corrupt. I mean, I think those days are over. We don't have that.
Oh, I
I
hope
mean, you
so.
don't have like the president of the Senate brother is one of the chief mobsters in the city. And it was pretty scary. I mean, it was just really. I think Kevin White was once asked. He was asked, why don't you do something about taking on Billy Bulger and Whitey Bulger? And White turned to him and I quote, he said, "Fuck you. I'm not going to do it. I'm not putting my neck out there. I have to
Right.
live." I mean, I mean, those
Right,
guys
right.
were pretty scary, you know.
There was a show. Did you ever catch it called Brotherhood? It was happened in Providence. It happened in Rhode Island.
Hmm.
That's where the show took place. But it was an absolute. Um, it was supposed to be the Bulger brothers, right?
Right.
Because
Oh yeah.
one was
Yeah.
big into politics, the other was the mobster in Rhode Island and Providence, and it was the dynamics and so forth. And if you're from Boston, you're from Massachusetts, and you're watching Brotherhood. I forget if it was HBO, Showtime, or whoever put it out, and you're saying, yeah, okay, they just absolutely wrote the brother Bulger story and replaced
Right.
Rhode Island and Providence with Boston and Massachusetts.
No, I mean,
Great
Howie
show.
Carr actually wrote a book called The Brothers Bulger, where
Yeah, the brothers Bulger.
he delves into this, and I mean, Howie Carr kind of pushed Jerry Williams aside, frankly, and took that show,
Yeah.
and
Well,
Jerry
Jerry
has,
created he created the student became the master, right?
yeah, that's right, which is sad, but that's it's a difficult business, and and after I suppose after Jerry Williams was gone, and David Bradnoy, who literally passed away on the air, it was very
Yeah.
sad.
You remember
Then
when they actually let him go? They let him go. They fired David Bradnoy at BZ, and the backlash was so huge in the movement that they brought him back. I don't know if you recall that. He was
yes,
let
I
go
do
for a
recall
little
that.
while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant
and
guy.
and the listeners said didn't want any part of that. They said no, 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 and they brought him back. There was a lot more to it, but in essence, that's the short version
Well,
of
there
it.
was a huge, yeah, as you say. I mean, he was an enormous powerhouse in Boston. BU professor. He was called in one day just on a lark to do a fill in for I'm not sure who, and he went in there and he was great. And he loved it and he got into it. That's how talk radio could work.
Hmm.
And I remember Jerry brought in Tom Likas. I don't know if you remember him.
I remember the name. I do
Yeah,
remember the name. Yeah.
he was he was a rogue, and he had to leave town because I think he hit his wife, and it's just a very bad guy. But he was a brilliant talk show host, and he could do this thing. It was amazing. He'd say, I just remember one segment. I think it was when Michael Jackson was having all the business of, being exposed with all the the boys and all that. And Tom Likas would go on the air alone, and he would say, there's so many more important things happening in this city and in this country right now. We've got inflation, we've got, people, oil prices, we've got the war in the Middle East, and all anybody wants to talk about is Michael Jackson. Why the hell are they just want? And he spent 4 hours talking about why they're not going to talk about Michael Jackson. I mean, he knew how to do this thing. It was just
Yeah.
incredible, great talent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Terrible
I,
man, but a great talent.
yeah. I gotta tell you, I'll admit that I have borrowed certain things from some of the greats over the years.
Of
Yeah,
course.
you listen to them so much, you admire their style that you pick it up. It's often when a student gets a chance to teach a class, and the teacher, they can see themselves in the student when they're teaching, and I think that's something. I know that let's see if you recognize this when I'll say introduce, bring in my show, and I'll say, broadcasting from our palatial but not overly ostentatious studios. Right?
That, yes, I do recognize that. I'm trying to play. I think it's Rush, right? Wouldn't
No,
that be?
no, it was a Boston guy.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
It's who? Tell me who
I'm accrediting that to Jerry
to Brad.
Williams.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds like Jerry.
Yeah, yeah. So that's where I'm remembering it as that's where I took it from, and of course it went away forever, because he was gone, and I think I first started using it when I was hosting Money Matters Radio Daily,
Oh,
and I
okay.
brought it back to that, and I'd say broadcasting because they were very palatial studios, by the way, because of course it was a
Well, what you mean
money company.
with Barry Armstrong
Barry
over in
Armstrong,
the
because we
yeah
were our
over in Needham,
studio. Yeah, so our studio was in his money
his
offices.
office. I actually did a show there briefly.
So they
How
were
is he? Is he?
beautiful.
Does he still do the show from there or not?
They still do. He doesn't. He's kind of retired from what I understand. So the son and members of the Armstrong Advisor Group still do it, but they have the studio still there. They don't go into
Yeah.
RKO. They
Oh no, it's
actually
fantastic.
do it right from there because he still owns WBNW and he still owns radio stations. Or he sold WASO, but he still has a radio station. It still comes out of there. They are
Mhm.
palatial, but not overly
They
ostentatious
are.
studios.
They are. I
And
remember.
and that's
Yeah,
what brought it. I said, if there was ever a chance to use broadcasting from our palatial, but not overly ostentatious studios, it would have been the Armstrong or the Money Matters Network
yeah.
studios.
I remember when they moved upstairs, and it was like this incredible
Yeah,
mahogany station with a big console, and it was just an amazing
the
place.
glass wall to the outside and to the
Yeah,
lobby, and yeah, it was a beautiful studio.
it was good, and
It
I
even had
tried to
a literal green room too.
it did. I mean,
Yeah,
I tried to make it there by selling segments basically
yeah,
and bringing people in. But the problem is some of these people were financial people and they wanted to come into Barry Armstrong's office and they were
yeah,
competitors and
yeah.
there was problems with that. But anyway, um, Jay Severin just passed away. I don't know if you noticed that.
I did not. I
Yeah.
did not know that. Jay Severin. Okay. Now there's a guy that had a very interesting career, and talk about a guy who understood the Constitution, right?
Oh, yeah. Very bright.
Um,
Yeah.
Great constitutional scholar, understood it, but I never understood why he needed to go over that line.
Yeah. I know what you
You
mean
know?
because he was one of the best talkers in terms of
Yeah. Just leave it
pronunciation,
at that.
language. He just would have he had the side to him that was it was unnecessary for him to
It's an
be
8 year
so
old boy.
vulgar.
The
You
humor of an
know,
8 year old
he
boy.
was. And then I think he crossed the line when he talked about sleeping with his aides and it just
The interns.
yeah, I mean it
They'd
just
sleep
was
with every intern, and there was a girl intern was about to start that summer, and the father called and said, "No,
no
you're
way.
not.
No,
No, you're not.
he was very he was quite lecherous and it's unfortunate as you say because he was a great talent. He didn't need to resort to that. It actually
Not at
was
all.
like a it was like
Totally took
putting
it away.
it's like painting the mustache on the Mona Lisa, you know?
Yeah, it was. It
Just
was a. I have a younger sister that always fancied Jay Severin her nemesis. She's an actress, comedian type person, and
mhm.
she used to love to call up or get in debates with him all the time. But you hit it on the head. If he had just made his argument on the issue in front of you and the constitutionality of it, and then shut up and let it stand, wow, perfect,
Exactly. He
perfect.
didn't need to do it. He was a very entertaining host. He didn't. He thought maybe he just it was just a part of him that was not
Yeah.
wholesome.
Well, it wasn't.
Uh,
It just wasn't good. You
no,
can't do that. And never mind today. I mean, even in that
no.
climate of a
It
few
was
years
offensive.
ago,
You know,
today, I mean, he wouldn't have lasted 8 seconds today.
no, no. It made you cringe anyway. It was just bad news, and it
I
was
mean,
too bad. The every so often, Dan Kennedy, over formerly at the Phoenix, now a professor at Northeastern, and he's on with Emily Rooney's show. He'll pipe up and talk about the demise of talk radio. Talk radio is dead. Every time something happens, talk radio is dead. He was saying this,
never.
of course. So where do you think talk radio is, and what do you account, Joe, for its longevity and its vibrancy?
Well, first of all, its longevity is it's the original interactive medium. I mean, we can have Facebook and Twitter, and you can have all kinds of chat and WeChat and TikToks and whatever you want to put out there. But when you're all said and done, the original medium, interaction medium, is talk radio, and all the talk radio has done is we've kept up with the time. So, if you have a terrestrial radio show like myself, it's going to be accompanied by streaming live, and then podcasts will be, put out there through the different platforms so that people can listen either on the radio or through a streaming device or anytime they want to. That's just staying up with the times. But it is there and it will always be there because it's in real time and it's real talk. And you've got news in real time, you've got real people who can get on. And for this show, for the Joe Mangiacotti show, we started out, and we're in our 14th year now, but it started out as conservatively speaking. And I draw, then it was Mike Wade and myself, and Mike retired in 2017, and I just continued as conservatively speaking with Joe Mangiacotti. Then it just dropped conservatively speaking almost a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, just Joe Mangiacotti show. And from day one, it has been the people's microphone. The purpose of the show, and originally Mike bore all the expense of it. I do now, but it was to put a microphone out there for the people. And we don't screen your opinions. We don't screen your topics. We make sure that you don't come on and you're rude or you say false information. We'll challenge you with that. That's what talk radio is. But it's the people's microphone, and you can't get that so many places. And now, what we're dealing with, my show as a conservative talk show, is dealing with, as so many conservative shows, is we've been integrated into the digital media, into the big social media giants, so much that they are exercising a lot of censorship. And they've been enjoying the Section 230 exemption since 2000. And they were originally, that was originally bestowed upon them because in 2000, this whole internet thing was still kind of new. We didn't really understand where it was going to go.
Right.
And Congress said, well, we got to make sure that they can grow and it can go where it is. Well, you know what, folks? They've grown enough. There's been nobody checking them as they buy up every competitor and they own everything. And now they're censoring. So now these digital platforms have got to make a determination. Are you a platform or are you a publication? If you're a publication, then we have to remove the Section 230 exemption, and you deal with the publication like the Boston Herald, the Boston Globe, the New York Times, Fox News, everyone else. If you are a platform, then be a platform and stay the heck out of my content. That's not what it's there for. So that is a problem that we're dealing with in today in conservative shows. Now, at the same time, I'm also the creator and the host of New England Pride Radio, right? Pride Radio. The only LGBTQ themed talk show of its kind in the country. And that alone actually prompts a lot of interview requests across the country because people want to say, wait a minute, you are a Boston market conservative talk show host and the host of the LGBTQ talk show in a blue state. How the hell does that work? You know,
I
so I
want to
get a
have you
lot of
back
those
to talk
requests.
about that one. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's pretty
yeah.
good.
So to where is radio today? It's where it's always been. Look, put it this way. 14 million cars were manufactured and put on the roads of the United States last year. I don't
Right.
see 14 million cars. I see 14 million radios with wheels. So, you know, they're going now. They might be fancy and you can plug a device into it or you
Yeah, but
got
a lot of
Bluetooth
people
on it.
they get Sirius XM, which also is
It's still
not.
radio.
It's still radio, but they don't. It's not quite the same as the old-fashioned stick in the ground,
No.
shooting it out there, taking calls. It's pure because they don't take calls usually. I mean, most of them don't, and sometimes they do, but it's not. I mean, there is something very pure about it's. It's almost like the way Jerry Williams used to describe boxing as the purest sport. Two guys stripped to the waist, duking it out until one of them falls down. You know, you can't
Yeah.
get a more pure sport than that.
Yeah.
Talk radio is like that in that it just emanates out there into the ether. You just shoot it out. People can call up, say you can't screen them. They can say whatever they want. You know, there's some, community standards, of course, but it is pure communication. It's sort of like in colonial times, the soapbox, or standing up in the town
Yeah.
square and giving a speech.
Being an
And
old Scully Square, right? Down
yeah,
in you know, and
so I don't think that's going to ever change.
no.
It transcends any particular medium, and I mean, of course, you should have on. I just had on Senator Marsha Blackburn. She's bringing legislation to try to regulate Google and Facebook and
Good.
Twitter and
Yeah.
how they're, because when she was running for the Senate in Tennessee, and she was the mainstream candidate. She'd been in Congress for 6 terms. About a month before the election, all of her social network was taken down and nothing. Twitter, Facebook, all of it.
That's
And
awful.
it was restored after about a week and a half, but this is like right before the election. And so she's very up on this. And, these things are not accidents. I mean, they
No.
seem too consistent.
They're only accidents when a Republican or conservative is involved. It's always an accident, and it happened. Never
Yeah.
these accidents never happen to the Democrat candidate. You know.
No, and even Breitbart, which had a
Yeah.
big role in the last election, they've seen they have evidence of being shadow banned. They've seen a cut of their following by about a third. So,
Yeah.
they
My show Facebook page, Charles, has been suspended from live streaming. My reach has been limited. I've been shadow banned. And some of it has to do with the people who don't like what you say, so they go and report you. So it didn't even come to Facebook's radar. It's somebody who's like, I don't like that, and so they do a couple clicks, right, and they're anonymous, and to them I say, wow, you guys are, I mean, that's just real dirty. That's just dirty. You know.
Right, right. You also might want to have on Alam Bokhari, who just wrote a book. He's a Breitbart journalist about this very subject, and I think he says that a lot of this is now artificial intelligence. It's not
Yeah.
even real people. It's algorithms. If it picks up on certain words or certain phrases, it automatically you get targeted and you get
Well, we know
denounced.
this has happened because we've seen posts and articles about the Constitution, about founding fathers being deleted, being
Yeah,
eliminated because just the way the words were talking about them, the algorithm read it and thought it was hate speech or what they call hate speech,
so
but it was
called.
literally about our founding fathers of the Constitution. But the artificial intelligence didn't understand that. And do you believe that? But remember, all the artificial intelligence, all those algorithms, Charles, are programmed by a human. So
Hmm.
you're going to have that human's biases programmed into it because somebody has to
Right.
tell it what are the words to look for,
That's
what
right.
are the phrases to look for, what is it that you don't want to put together, what two words do you recognize in the speech recognition software recognizes it, translates it, and you can't have these two words appearing in the same sentence or paragraph because it must be hate speech if they appear together, and then it automatically wipes it out. So it has to come back to a human.
It does. I mean, computers don't just do it by themselves. It's just a vehicle. I mean, they have to be programmed by
Yeah.
people who
So
have a mind. I was I've been doing talk radio off and on for years. In small markets, and when I started doing it, I think it was in 99, 98. I got this small gig over at Tufts University at the WMFO, and I went there and I was conservative. And I remember, you had lots of young women with blue hair and all of that. And it was kind of, very, very left leaning. And I'd have on people like Noam Chomsky and Howard Zinn and Gloria Steinem. And I had a great time because people liked to argue with me and we'd have great debates and there
yeah,
would be good ribald discussions. And sometimes we'd have emotional instances, but for the most part, it was all you know, in great spirit. And then I left there and I came back in just before Trump was elected in 2016. I decided to go back and take a show there. And the atmosphere was like 180 degrees different. It was really oppressive.
yeah,
People were afraid to talk to me. People like Noam Chomsky won't talk to me anymore, not because of me personally, but because he just doesn't. They don't talk to the other side.
it's
And
amazing.
it was just and after being there for a couple of months, I then was reported to the bias police because of something I had said. I guess that the Tufts has this anti-bias office, if you
Wow.
hear somebody say something that you don't like, you could end up as a student, which explains why they're so quiet and so fearful. You could end up, your parents are paying 60 grand a year for you to go to the school. You don't need to have a mark on your record. You could get
Charles,
suspended.
think about that. College, where this is where you're out of mom and dad's shadow. This is where you're supposed to be thinking and debating and challenged and expressing, and you're supposed to be under the guidance of these professors who encourage whatever it is that you're thinking, and then help rein it in and show you, not program you, not indoctrinate you, not punish you for speaking out. I mean, it's very Orwellian
It
that
is.
you must speak. This is double speak double plus good, that you have to do this, and it's very scary. And I've often talked about this on air a few times, but even among friends, that I look and I say, I feel for my great nieces and nephews who are everywhere from 2 to 14 today, in the world they're going to be in. I'm on the downslope of my life path,
Mm-hmm.
and what I see and where I see we're going, and I look at this election and I said, this is really. I thought the 2016 was the most important election to that point in our lives, in my life, and now 2020 is the next most. I mean, it is the most important election,
Absolutely.
especially considering it's a proven entity running against a committee. Uh,
Running
Donald
against,
Trump isn't running against a man; he's running against a committee. He's running
yes.
against the cabal and
Yeah.
in powers to be, and we know what those powers to be. And the ironic part of it is The same powers that he's fighting are the same powers that are in control of the fight, and that's horrible, right? Because he has no idea who he can trust within the federal government or
No, I
who's
mean
on his
it's
side.
I couldn't agree with you more. And you know, they're stuffing the ballot box already with hundreds of thousands of ballots that are
They
just
found the ballots in the dump or in the river or whatever, and majority of them were Trump ballots that whatever,
yeah.
assuming a postal
These were
person decided to throw away because they were Trump ballots.
yeah. I mean the U.S. Post Office has endorsed Biden. What does that tell you? I mean, people, you know, can we trust a postman to maybe keep a bag of ballots, you know, away from being delivered? And already I think it was in Wisconsin that these ballots showed up on the side of a highway.
Yeah.
You know,
And then there
it's
was
very
the
bad.
issue, Charles, about it's two part because you've got your ballot and then we call what they call the secrecy envelope that you put it in. And
Hmm.
people were confused. So they were sending it back without the secrecy envelope, meaning everybody could see who you voted for.
Right.
So Pelosi et al. Comes out and says, well, let's just do away with the secrecy envelope. It's too confusing, meaning that all those ballots can be scanned and any Trump ballots or Biden ballots can be pulled out depending on who's doing the scanning. Absolutely ridiculous. And the worst part about this is absentee ballot has existed for years. That's what it's
Sure.
called. We didn't have to create any new system. If you didn't feel like you wanted to go to the polls, which, by the way, it's perfectly fine. If you can go to the post office, if you can go to the grocery store, go to the bank, you do everything I do on a normal basis, and nobody's dropping dead around me, I can go to the polling place. So
Right.
that aside, but say you're 67, you're obese, you have diabetes, whatever, and you're in a high risk category, I totally get it, and I respect the fact that you're concerned. You're not going out. Good for you. That's your choice. You already had a system in place to vote by absentee, called the absentee ballot. You call up the clerk or wherever you live, you make the arrangements. They know that you're on the list. They know that it's going to. There's processes in place for the integrity of that ballot, and you vote absentee. Meaning the president of the United States will be voting absentee. His residence is in
Of
Florida.
course.
He's in Pennsylvania Avenue. So it's asinine, and the only reason to create this mass mailing of ballots along with ballot harvesting. And if you saw, Pelosi wanted to remove two things: the signature verification aspect of it, which is wow, and any place that already had a voter ID requirement to eliminate that as well on a federal level. There's no reason in the world for ballot harvesting, no signature verification, and no voter ID. There's only one reason not to have those things, and that is to make it easier to commit voter fraud. And do not tell me voter fraud
No, of
doesn't
course.
exist. I
Of
can
course.
turn the news on any day of the week and give you two or three examples.
Of course it exists. And it exists like any other kind of fraud. I mean, it's like saying,
Yeah.
don't tell me that nobody ever gets their car ripped off. I mean, you have a situation of power and influence and financial gain, and so there's going to be fraud. I mean, that's a given. What is voter harvesting anyway, Joe?
Voter harvesting. All right. So when they send out these massive ballots that are just blindly going out, and they can go to dead people. We know, one was sent to a cat who's been dead for 9 years, right? So they're out there. Well, what ballot harvesting is that you can send the parties can send operatives, paid people or volunteer people to go collect those ballots from people, right? And if they haven't voted, to actually
Oh,
show
that's
up on the
yeah.
door and say, you haven't voted, but I have a ballot right here. Can we fill it out? Or just go collect them. And then that person who has absolutely no fiduciary responsibility to the integrity of the election process is going to transfer these ballots from they're gathering them all up to the counting location. Well, there's absolute so what's the process here? They can screen those, they can pull out all the ones they don't want, and only their candidate shows up. They can coerce or even gently guide people into voting for who they want to vote. They can change votes. It's absolutely just saying all your political operatives, instead of the traditional voter suppression or voter swaying that they would do, right? Hanging out at the polling booth, or there's all those techniques over the years, going around paying $5 to the
Mhm.
drunks to go vote, that kind of thing.
Sure.
Now,
busloads of
this is
people
just
driven to New
organizing
Hampshire.
this. Yeah, trucks to New Hampshire. Well, this is just organizing it. We're
Yeah,
just doing it on a larger scale, and we're going to organize it. And when we watch these riots, and look, just like I make a very important distinction between an illegal immigrant and an immigrant, there's a distinction between a rioter and a protester.
right.
Protester is a protester. The moment that protester turns non-peaceful, they throw a projectile, they set something on fire, they put quick dry cement in the locks and set a building on fire, they are no longer a protester, they're a
Yeah,
criminal. All right,
exactly.
and
Yeah,
if we can see the organization that we see with the criminals, or the U-Haul van pulls up, just like we
I've
watched in
seen that.
Kentucky,
Yeah,
and they unload all the pre-made signs and everything is all set to go, how difficult is it to be organized to get 10,000 votes for your candidate with a little shady business? None whatsoever.
no, it's been
The
going on since
organizations are
time immemorial.
already in place.
Yeah, I mean that's right. So I guess that since we're reaching toward the end, Joe, what do you think is going to happen then? I mean, on no election day this year.
Well, I think that Donald Trump will win. I think he'll win on the election day. I think he will get the electoral votes that he needs. And I think that just like Podesta and all of them have been doing with, I mean, who runs a war room on how to challenge illegal? I mean, they asked President Trump, will you, support a peaceful transition? Asking the wrong party. First of all, they didn't support the peaceful transition of 2016, and
Right.
plus they had a coup going on, false investigations, altering documentation, spying on a president, a candidate elect, and a president. So first of all, you haven't accepted. That's 2016 is the first time since 1792 that we haven't had a peaceful transition. So now you look at 2020. I don't think it's Trump you need to worry about. So I think that he's going to win, but the armies of attorneys in the wings waiting to go are going to start challenging it. And I think the Democrats will do what they do with everything that they don't like, instead of just understanding that they were defeated on the facts and the policy. What do we have to do to get elected legitimately? They're going to change the rules, and they're going to try to keep counting until Joe Biden
Yeah,
is ahead.
they're going to keep counting the ballots until they get what they want. And I mean, Hillary Clinton, who's somebody who often lets the cat out of the bag, she
Do
said this
not,
several weeks ago. She
do
said,
not, yes,
right. She said,
concede
my
under any.
advice to Biden, do not concede, keep
Yep.
going, send people out. We're not going to
Is that
concede.
is that the a peaceful power transfer of power?
Yeah,
Right there,
exactly.
perfect example. So you've got that. You got Michelle Obama in the DNC. In her speech, she said, "Do you think that it can't get any worse?" Well, it can. I mean,
Yeah.
they it's not even a veiled threat, Charles. They're threatening us. If you don't elect our guy, we're going to be even worse than we have been. Meanwhile, gun sales have gone through the roof. Applications have gone through the roof. You can't even get ammunition. I stopped at my local gunsmith the other day to pick up for Target. No ammunition. It's
It's all
almost
sold out.
impossible
Yeah.
to find.
Especially
Why
women
do
are
you think
getting
that
guns.
is? Oh, women is the fastest growing. Right, it's
Yeah.
huge. And when you see the couples like the McCluskeys,
Oh,
what
yeah.
they're going
Defending the
through,
property. Yeah, it's
right?
horrible.
They're arrested, but nobody else. Or how about Carl Rittenhouse, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The
It's a
the
self
guy
defense.
that was chasing him with the pistol and raised it to shoot him, and he shot his. I mean, this kid, when you really look at it, he's a hell of a shot. And he wasn't wildly shooting, and he could have shot wildly in the crowd.
Right.
He actually shot those people meaning to do him harm and took them down. He shot that guy in the forearm where they're holding the pistol. That guy has not been charged. Why? Why isn't he been charged? He
Maybe
was
the,
attempting murder. He
yeah,
was
the,
chasing a man holding a gun, telling him, I'm going to kill you. And he's not charged, but the boy who did the self defense is
well, maybe they have a district attorney that was helped by
George
George
Soros.
Soros, who spent $18 million electing local district
Yep.
attorneys.
But
Anyways, so Joe, listen, how
are we out
can
of
my
time?
pretty much?
All right. Sorry.
No, no, no. This has been fun.
I could have
Um,
kept going. Yeah,
oh
absolutely,
yeah,
Charles. Thank
we
you
could
so
talk for
much. It
hours.
has been a great conversation.
Let my viewers and listeners know where they can listen to your show and get
Absolutely.
information.
I anchor weekend mornings on AM 830 WCRN 6 to 8 o'clock Saturday and Sunday mornings, live streaming on the TuneIn app. And I usually live stream on my Facebook page, The Joe Mangi Show, MANGI, The Joe Mangi Show on Facebook. you've got the audio, and there's just a camera in the studio. No big deal. But those are the ways you can hear it. And then at joemangie.com
Hmm.
are the past shows and podcasts.
Where is WCRN now
We
physically?
changed. They moved the studios from Franklin Street in downtown Worcester to Turnpike Road, Route 9 in Westboro, because we are really the signal for all of Boston to Worcester County and Metro West. There's really all those stations, right?
Yeah.
KOX and SRO. They're all gone. They've moved, or they're off the air, or they've gone Catholic or something like that. So we are it. AM 830 is the Central Mass station when
Cool.
you want talk radio. And
All
Howie
right.
comes on too.
Yeah.
That's why he has on, because in the evening, in the summer, in the wintertime, as you know, the power goes down on RKO, and Howie needs that Metro Central Massachusetts signal. And we're 50,000 watts all the time. And
Do you have like a live overnight?
overnight is usually we go to a North Star Music of the Night, so it's very
Hmm.
nice. It's music overnight. It used to be all talk, but the owner, the Carberries, decided to, because he owns North Star Media, and so
Right.
they decided to play this beautiful music, which is really nice. And occasionally there is programming, so sometimes I will accidentally turn it on and hear myself in the middle of the morning.
There you go. You can never,
So
you can't get away from it.
yeah,
All right,
so
Joe.
tell me
Listen,
about it.
thanks so much.
Thank
Great
you.
talking to you.
You
As
too.
always, thank you. Have a good one.
Take care. Bye.
All right.